Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Stanley. This is their part number F179. It's a 3.5 inch hinge and a black finish. They call it US1D. Let's cut it out of the box and take a closer look at it. These hinges are sold as each. When you buy one, we'll send you one hinge. The unit of measure is not related to how many they can fit in a box. There's an F179 in black finish, 3.5. Okay. One hallmark of Stanley is they do a good job with their finishing. They always do. And not everybody does as good of a job when making hinges. Right in here in the crotch of the hinge, right here in the barrel where the leaf and the barrel meet, that's where it's difficult for some manufacturers to really do a nice finish. Stanley does a good job on that, and it's why actually here I'll show you. This is just a little hinge. Let me show you a real hinge. Doing a project for the major airline at the major airport in Chicago. These are FBB 199s from Stanley. Solid stainless, heavyweight, 4.5. They do a great job getting that finish right in there. Okay, they do a really great job. The fact of the matter is, not everybody does. I've seen hinges that look really, really poor. I've had hinges rejected from clients from other manufacturers because the finish just wasn't good enough, and it wasn't. No way was it good enough. Okay, so back to our hinge. F179, let's dissect that. That means that this is a hinge that is made, the F179 means a number of things. First of all, it means it means it's made of steel. The F179 tells us it's a plain bearing hinge. There are no bearing packets here at all. This also tells us that it's a 5-knuckle hinge. That it is a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves here that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. Okay. This is 3.5, and 3.5 is a reference to the size naturally, but specifically the height first. Before we get to that, the leaf thickness on this, I believe, is 123 thousandths. It is. My caliper's telling me 124 thousandths. That's pretty good. Okay. This is going to include screws and a complementary finish. It'll be black. And where would you use this hinge? Well, probably on an 1 3/8 door, residential in nature. This is called a commercial grade hinge because in 3.5, in hinges you have residential, you have standard, you have residential weight, standard weight, then heavyweight. That earlier hinge I showed you was 180 thousandths. That was heavyweight for its size. This hinge is standard weight for its size, which means in a 3.5 inch you're dealing with 123 thousandths. Residential weight would be about 89 thousandths, in that range for this type of hinge. So this is not the typical residential hinge in the sense that this is a commercial grade thickness on the leaf. Okay. Now back to the height. This is 3.5. That's the overall height and the overall width. What's important to know is that the height is the first dimension. It's 3.5 inch tall. Then it's 3.5 inch wide. Why is it important to know the height is the first dimension? Well, if I sold you a hinge that was 4.5 by 4 or 4.5 by 6, it would be nice to know how tall of a prep you're doing on the door. The first dimension in the set of 2 dimensions is that height prep. So that's important. The width of the hinge is certainly important, but I believe the height being the first dimension is more important because it's more of a relationship of how thick is the door? What is the size of the door? What is the duty rating that the hinge or the load or the work that the hinge is expected to do. That's all buried under that first height dimension. The second dimension kind of becomes necessary as a hanger-on, so to speak. A 4.5 by 4, 4.5 tall, 4-inch wide. What's the difference between that and a 4.5, 4.5? Well, when the leaf is closed, a 1/4 inch. It moves the vertical axis of pivoting towards the face of the door a 1/4 inch. That's nice. That would be considered best practice to use 4.5 by 4 in applications where your frame stands proud of your wall, it wraps your wall, and the door could swing 180 degrees. Draw that vertical axis of pivoting in towards the face of the door. It makes the job of the hinge easier to do. It's more efficient because you're drawing the weight and that vertical axis of pivoting closer to where the weight actually resides. A 4.5 by 6 or a 5 by 8. What's the difference between a 4.5 by a 4.5 by 4 and a 4.5 by 6? Well, then we're going to pull the vertical axis of pivoting out over here. Why would you do that? A wide throw hinge, when you had to take that door and swing it out and around and get it over a thick casing, a wall condition. Lots of reasons to use wide throw hinges. A real cool example is a set of 4 doors in Manhattan with all of the space being so at a premium there. A loading dock door needing to have like 8 foot of clear opening. They couldn't just, if they had a single leaf or a pair of 4-foot leaves, they would literally swing out into the street. So what these ingenious people did was they took 4 2-foot panels and basically allowed them to stack against each other. The outer panel stacked. The first and second panels stacked back into the third, and then the third folded on the fourth, and all of that then stacked against the wall. So they used increasingly wider wide throw hinges to accomplish that. A narrow hinge and then wider wide throw hinges. It was really great. A great example of that. The problem is, you're hanging a lot of weight off of those hinges, and I don't recall the specifics of how many and what grade of hinge they were, but those hinges that were taking that first panel on the jam were doing really all the work. You needed a lot there. Actually, depending on your wall condition, you might even, if you were going to try to emulate that, you might even be able to do that on a continuous hinge. If you could take your stacked panels and then just move the whole stack over on a wide throw. They do make wide throw continuous hinges as well, but on a continuous hinge. I don't recall the specifics well enough. Let's take a look at some technical information on this hinge. Now, from our website, you can get to the manufacturer's page here, and you can pull up the manufacturer's page and search for Stanley, and we'll get to Stanley hardware. And Stanley and others, but Stanley does a really good, memorable job when it comes to their published information. It might be General Hinge Catalog. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, this will be a great document. So in this document, General Hinge Catalog, they will give you the 101, so to speak, on what hinges are. We're doing a full mortise. There are these other types that are explained here as well, and they're shown how they're put together. That reference to wide throw. Imagine if the door was inset significantly, or the thickness of this casing, you could see how you would need to move that vertical axis of pivoting out. Different styles of hinges here. They have a load chart, and I refer to this all the time. Okay, an F179 hinge they don't have a 3.5 inch, but you can see how this style hinge is really only rated for, relatively light doors. You get past a door of 50 pounds, you need to start thinking about bearing, and they list concealed bearing hinges here. They do have hinges that will get you out to these exceptionally heavy weights, and those are possible. And as you stroll through this catalog, the encyclopedic reference document information is really second to none. Back to the wide throw concept. If you needed to calculate the overall width of a hinge, you can do so here. Okay. Frequency of door operation and what its classification should be. So this document is really super handy. We're doing a 1D finish, black coated. Other finishes are referenced here as well. A BHMA code of other finishes. More classifications of the hinge types. And as you can see, it gives you a complete schooling on the different hinge types. And obviously this all applies to Stanley, but the knowledge of hinges applies across. Applies to everybody. These swing clear style hinges and these odd applications. Olive knuckle hinges are fun. Those are always interesting to prep into a wood door. They have some pivot hardware, rescue hardware here. Decorative tips are available. Okay, and that exhausts that catalog. What I wanted to be able to pull up was the template for this. And let's see if we can quickly do that. F179. F179. 3.5 inch. And here it is. 3.5 by 3, 3.5, 3.5, wide throw hinges. 3.5 by 5, 3.5 by 6. Everything will stay the same. The only dimension will change will be your F dimension, depending on your size of your leaf. Okay. They could, back to the other example, they can even do a 3-inch, and that's nice as well. Again, draw that door and draw that vertical axis of pivoting in closer. Also would be appropriate if you had a thinner door naturally. Okay. The F191 is a reference to the same hinge in a non-ferrous base. That would be brass, that would be bronze, or that could be stainless steel. The point of this is it will show you where the holes are for the screws. If you're not sure if this matches what you have, by all means refer to this before purchasing the hinges. Okay. This is called a template. This document is a template. But this pattern itself is literally called the template pattern. There are certainly existing in the world other locations of holes where they're physically located on the hinge leaf. So be sure to double check before you are just sure that this is going to work. These other models here are simply different hinge part numbers that you could derive out of the out of the full catalog. FBB 179 is the same as the F179 except that it's ball bearing. The CB would be the same as well except that it's a concealed bearing, and I believe it might be a 3-knuckle hinge as well. I'm positive that it is a 3-knuckle hinge rather than it being a 5-knuckle hinge. On a standard weight hinge, you'll have 2 bearing packets. If this template were to be for heavyweight hinges, it would be a 199 would be the part number. Pardon me, it would be 199 would be the standby. I spoke too soon. Oh, it would be on a heavyweight hinge. The heavyweight version would be a FBB 168. They would not, well, they may make a non-ball bearing, but it would be 168 versus 179. And if it was a heavyweight non-ferrous, it would be 199. There is a link to the architectural hardware catalog that's here, that when you pull it up, you'll be able to search all documents in the range. For instance, we're looking at an FBB 168, a heavyweight hinge, and all the options. So with this hinge, an F179, which will show up, and here's its cut sheet. Okay, listing all the sizes that you can do these hinges in. Okay. for use on internal or external doors without door closers in hospitals, churches, etc. So if your door has a door closer, you're going to want ball bearing hinges. Template hole pattern for use in wood or steel frames. This does include all wood screws and all machine screws. Oh, forgive me. This includes, yeah, all 6 wood and 6 machine screws. Can be furnished with hospital tips where they're going to grind down the tip here and put a radius on it. And you can certainly order decorative tips as well, speaking of that ball tip, things of that nature. Okay, let's wrap up this video. So the resources are there in terms of the catalog information, where you can really deep dive all both machine and 1024 would be the size on those screws. 6 machine screws, 6 wood screws are all included with this. Also included, pretty typical for the manufacturer, is to include cardboard shims, which are here. This is material that also helps insulate the hinges from each other, but these are also shims. They actually sell these, so if you do a lot of door work, you might want to just save some of these. They're just cardboard. They are for use to help tip your door, align your door as it's indicated, but not ever for use on fire-rated doors. If you need to shim a fire-rated door, you'll do so with steel shims, which we can certainly supply you as well. Okay. That link below this video to the manufacturer's page will allow you to pull up all of the Stanley products that we sell, as well as those encyclopedic links and a link to the manufacturer's website. Stanley will make this hinge in lots of different colors. Your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, your nickels, obviously black. They will do oil-rubbed bronze. It's made of steel, so it will be prime coat as well. Being made of steel, they can do those finishes, whatever would be appropriate for a steel-based hinge. They're obviously fully capable of that material. The name Stanley is synonymous with hinges and many other things. They're part of a much larger organization that I've quite frankly lost track of in terms of all of the different company types that their tentacles reach into, or how they're cross-connected with many other people. Precision exit devices, Best locks, Dorma, Kava, etc. Any questions on the F179, 3.5, 3.5, and a US1D finish, or any other Stanley product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.